And now, for the meat of our presentation, we're going to get detailed information of the various SAG-AFTRA television and theatrical contracts from our National Director of Specialty Performers, Terry Beecherer, and our Director of Background Services, Fatna Salak-Williams.
I have control. I'm so excited. So anyway, before I get into this very meaty stuff, I just want to take a minute and say congratulations and thank you guys for coming out. This is an amazing turnout, and I think we even have some people over in the Maxwell that are watching on video. So this is some of the best things that you can do for yourself is to attend educational events, attend networking opportunities. And you know, I have to take a moment to congratulate these guys because they've done a yeoman's job of putting this all together. You have a lot of people that are working on your behalf. I want to recognize a few people in the audience, if I could. Rick introduced Fatna, who is our new director for background actors. You're going to love her. She's amazing. You guys have packets that, I mean, she worked so hard on all the cheat sheets and getting everything together for you. Taloria Milner, who is about somewhere. She's, you know, yeah. You guys know Taloria, but what you may not know is that she's been promoted to the position of business representative. So she'll be out there fighting for claims and contracts. We also have Deborah Booth and Maria Timpani from the Background Actors Department. They will be picking up questions throughout the evening. So if you have questions about this, you know, what we're going to present, just write them down and pass them over, and someone will pick it up. We have several members of the background. Oh, and Lewis. He's behind me. He's in the background. Oh, no. Lewis Hemphill, who is our amazing admin assistant, and you know, make sure that everything's collated and typed up perfectly, et cetera. Ilian Morden-Kitchaven is your LA Local Executive Director. I know that Serena is here somewhere, Serena Kung, also with the LA Local. I see several members of the Background Actors Committee, Carol Elliott, Robin Lawrence. We also have Ron Ostro and Holly Petrago, who are the co-chairs of the National Background Actors Committee. And also, you know, I think a warm welcome to Ms. Jane Austin, who is the LA Local President and the National Secretary Treasurer. So, Joan, did I forget Joni? She's hiding back there. And then, you know, again, give yourselves a big hand for showing up and helping your career. I think this is great. So now I'm so happy about this control, I better figure out how to use it. What do I have to point it at?
Right there. Just,
oh.
Oh, it's went down. Did it go backward?
Yeah, you're going backwards, yeah.
Up there.
No, I think it's still going backwards. Bear with me, I'll work out this technical stuff. Maybe it's this. Yes, okay, I seem to be going the other direction now. Okay, back to one. So we're going to talk about all of the contracts that affect you for entertainment contracts, which means not commercials, that sort of thing. We'll start with theatrical and television. These are the ones that you guys are probably most used to working under. They're certainly ones that I'm the most familiar with administering. Here's a list. So you've got your theatrical agreement, television agreement, the network code, I'm going to abbreviate that, the CW supplement, which is the CW supplement to Exhibit A of the SAG-AFTRA Television Agreement, and then some of the more ancillary contracts like Central Productions, that's a Comedy Central agreement. It's a Laugh production, which is that, I can't remember, is that Disney Channel? Okay. Up Down Productions is Nick, King Street Productions, and the New Media Agreement, which is also a part of the television and theatrical agreements. Yay, that worked, okay. So we'll start off with the SAG-AFTRA Codified Basic Agreement, and this covers theatrical motion pictures, low-budget motion pictures. There are a couple of, there's modified low and ultra low, but we're not going to get too deep into those because there's not a lot of background coverage. It's negotiated with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, more commonly known as the AMPTP. And I think this is a really interesting fact. We negotiate this every 3 years. It's coming up for renewal in 2017. So there will be, you'll hear about wages and working conditions meetings that will be starting up. And this is something that everybody can participate in. So watch the website and your emails for more information about that. The low-budget motion pictures, these are promulgated, and that means that the union actually does make those up. And we sign independent producers to them. They have lower budgets. They also have to all be made within the United States. So that's another condition on the low budgets. They can't have big studio backing. So, Disney can't, tell somebody, go make this, lower budget movie and sign on to that contract. But it offers discounted rates and modified terms and conditions for low-budget motion pictures. The affirmative action incentive that you saw on the earlier screen, the one that Sam's been working on, so they get to add a little bit to their budget if they are hiring a diverse cast. So that's with minorities, women, persons of color. I'm not sure what the percentages are, but that's one of the things that they can do to add to their budget. And
3,375,000.
Okay.
Increases it.
So, oops, what have I done here? Okay, so we'll talk about the scope of the theatrical agreement. Now, these are, and you guys are familiar with this stuff, we talk about zones. There's a couple of kinds of zones. These are the jurisdictional zones. So this is where we actually can cover background actors under this contract. There's a 300-mile zone around New York. It's actually around Columbus Square. In Los Angeles, it's 75 miles around the intersection of Beverly and La Cienega. So Rick is the center of the zone. So just call Rick if you don't know if you're in the zone or out of the zone. It also covers the city of San Diego, 25 miles around San Francisco. That's Market and Powell Streets. 25 miles around a point in Sacramento. 15 miles around the Clark County Courthouse in Las Vegas, and the entire state of Hawaii, which we couldn't fit onto this screen, but you guys kind of know where it is. So all of that middle of the country, we don't have coverage for background actors. And this is something that also you have to negotiate. And we've certainly tried in past negotiations. It's very tough to get the producers to come to the table. Obviously, when all of these contracts were first negotiated, there wasn't really any motion picture production out there in the vast middle of the country, but that's changing now with all of the tax incentives. So this is something that we're very aware of. Oh. Okay, I had arrows. I could have used arrows. All right, I get ahead of myself. So the definitions of background actors in the contracts. These actually aren't contractual definitions, but the categories of background actor in the TV and theatrical, there's general background actor, and that's, just your basic, it's a person of atmospheric business, which includes the normal actions, gestures, and facial expressions of the background actor's assignment. There's a special ability background actor, which is, you get an extra $10, so that's really exciting. But if you're specifically called and asked to do like riding a bicycle, riding a camel, there's all sorts of different things that you can do. Jump rope, playing musical instruments, but that's only if there's not an AF of M agreement in place. And then stand-ins, everybody know that a stand-in is someone who stands in for a principal performer for lighting and blocking. Thank you. Who said that? Thank you so much. Yes, for blocking and lighting purposes. A photo double you're actually on camera. This has kind of been mingled over the years, but if you're doing it off camera, that's a stand-in. In this last negotiation, we were able to achieve an outsized increase for stand-ins because they do a lot of work. So, and we'll get to the rates here in a minute. Now, omnis. Everybody knows what an omni is? So omnis are indistinguishable background chatter. So if you think about you're sitting over at Marie Callender's or wherever it is, a coffee shop, you're talking, you're having a conversation with your friend, but there's all this ambient noise in the background, and it just wouldn't seem real if it weren't for all that noise. But you don't really hear, you might hear little snippets occasionally, but you're not paying attention to someone else's conversation. So anytime they need that kind of ambient sound, that's considered omnis. So, think about casinos, think about the park, a school, anywhere where there's a lot of people, you're going to have omnis. Omnis can be done under a background contract. There are also a couple of times where you can actually be directed to say specific things. I'll get into that in a minute. But this is just, it's completely allowable. It doesn't matter how many people they are, as long as it's just background chatter and you're not, having to say anything specific for the scene. And these are your rates. I think this is something that most people generally know. This is for the theatrical agreement. It goes up on July 1st every year. So it's currently $157. It will go up to $162 in just about 6 weeks. So y'all get a raise. So the special ability, as I said, is another $10. Photo doubles are considered special ability. And then the stand-ins are at $180 now, and they'll go to $189. So we got them 5% each year in the last negotiation. Other terms. So let's talk about caps. Just like we don't have jurisdiction over every area in the United States, we also don't have jurisdiction over every position. This is, again, something that has to be negotiated. Currently, in the theatrical agreement, we cover the first 57 background actors, and one stand-in can be excluded from that count. That gets you a total of 58. So all stand-ins are covered. One of them doesn't count towards that cap. So gets you to a total of 58 covered positions. In the low-budget agreement, it's 30 background actors is the cap. In all of the lower budgets where we do cover background, it's generally at the same terms and conditions as in the regular theatrical agreement. So it's, that's where we kind of discounted in the numbers. And remember, we made those contracts up, so we felt like, background actors already don't make enough money, so we're not going to give them further discounts. For a modified low-budget agreement, which is less if they're using what we call the background actor incentive, so they're covering some background actors. It's an average of 3 a day for the length of the shoot. So if you've got 20 shoot days and you cover 60 background actors, you can do that in one big crowd scene. But it's an average over the 3 days. So basically the rates that I showed you a few minutes ago, that was for an 8-hour day. And you get that rate, you're guaranteed 8 hours. So if you only work 4 hours, they're paying you to go run your errands after that 4 hours is over. But if you work beyond 8 hours, and that doesn't include the meal period, so that's your off work time when you're on your half hour or your hour meal period. But beyond that 8 hours, you get overtime. It is time and a half for the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th hours, and we're talking about Schedule X1 here. So that's all of the West Coast zones. And it's done in 1/10 of an hour increments. So every 6 minutes, you get another little unit of overtime. So if you go 1 minute past 8 hours, that starts that unit, and you get that whether you go, 1 or 6 minutes. Once you go 7, you get another increment. And then work beyond the 12th hour is double time. Do we have a 16-hour rule slide on here?
No, but it's on the cheat sheet. So.
Okay. So let's talk about the 16-hour rule, because I know that everybody is wondering about that.
You guys can pull the cheat sheet. It's the first one, Schedule X.
So 16 hours. is a long time to be on a set. And one of the things that unions try to do is limit things that are taxing, like are really, I mean, it's ridiculous to have people working for 16-hour days. You know, when we go into negotiations, usually we have a couple of really long days, like 12, 13 hours. The last day may go 16 or 18 hours. I'm toast. I am absolutely done for a week after that. So when I see things like, you know, big budget motion pictures that have 2 or 3 days of golden time, which is what the term is for violation of the 16-hour rule, it's golden time because it's a full day of pay for each hour or fraction of an hour beyond 16. Now that does include your meal time. So from the time you report until the time you're dismissed is longer than 16 hours. You may have had a meal break. That next minute goes into golden time. And it is, you know, whether it's 1 or 10 or 20 minutes, full day, the next hour, a full day of pay. And that includes all of your adjustments. And the other thing that, you know, and this is something that is a bit of a contentious portion, is that it is not overtime. That is a penalty. And oftentimes we'll see producers try to cut off the overtime. But there's nothing that says the overtime goes up to 16 hours and then stops. So if you get golden time and they're not also paying the double time for those hours, please let us know, because we want to make sure that we protect that in the contract and we file claims on it. And so that is, oh, and the other thing about golden time is it's no more than 16 hours in any one 24-hour period. So, you know, there's this concept of rest periods in the principal portion of the contract. You know, you have to have 12 hours of rest, or, you know, it's a day's pay. So it's kind of like that. If they keep you, let's say 12 hours, and they call you back 6 hours later, and you work for another 7 or 8 hours, that's going to count as a violation of the 16-hour rule. So it's any 24-hour period. So yeah, I mean, that's something that I don't think people really know either. Yes, yes, absolutely, the same employer. So we'll get to, what did I say? Yes. So you cannot be on a set for the same producer for more than 16 hours in any one 24-hour period. So let's say you come in at 7 a.m. and then they release you at 8, 9 p.m. So that's what, 14 hours? And then let's say they have they need you back really, really early the next morning, like 2 in the morning. Then the time that you work past 2, once that goes past the 24 hours from 7 a.m., that starts the golden time clock too. Does that make sense? Okay. So, and all of this, it didn't used to be that way. I know that a lot of people may be surprised, but it has been that way in the contract since 1967. So, you know, it comes up too. So, so that's pretty much your OT. You know, a couple of other things. Do we have a slide on the 6th and 7th days?
No, but, you know,
Okay.
it's on the...
On your cheat
On the
sheets?
cheat sheet.
Okay, I'm going to
Everything's
tell
there.
them about it. So if you're working 6 days in a studio work week for a producer, it's the 6th day is time and a half. The 7th day is double time. On an overnight location, that 6th day is at straight time, but your 7th day is at time and a half on an overnight location. And on overnight locations, you guys know that you're paid every day, whether you're working or not. So if you're there over a weekend, but you're not working on the weekend, you're still getting paid a full day for each day. Yes, plus per diem. So it says that the producer will pay all of your traveling expenses, necessary traveling expenses, and that's in addition to the day of pay. Because, you know, the thought process there is they're taking you out of the market. You know, if you were here, you could still look for work. And this is one of the themes that kind of runs throughout the agreements. You know, it's often how they're affecting the rest of your work life. So, meal periods. Okay, this is what the penalties are if they are not breaking you properly. The contract says there has to be meal of not less than 30 minutes, but not more than an hour. every 6 hours. You can't deduct more than one meal period in the first 8 hours. So we have something called this NDB. I'm sure that this is something that everybody knows about, right? NDB means non-deductible breakfast, and that can occur within 2 hours of your call time. So the 15 minutes has to say you come in at 6 a.m., your non-deductible meal has to be over by 8. So it's a 15-minute period. You have to be free of all activity. They have to provide a meal appropriate to the time of day, and you have to know that that's happening. So they have to let you know that there's an NDB. That stops the clock. It starts your 6-hour clock. So it's from the end of the non-deductible meal. Now, it's not from the end of that 2-hour period. It's from the end of when they actually gave you that non-deductible meal. So if they do it when you come in at 6, and let's say they do it from 6:30 to 7:45, or 6:30 to 6:45, that'd be a really long NDB, then your 6-hour clock starts at 6:45. If they don't break you by 12:45, then you go into meal penalties. And the first meal penalty is for a half-hour delay or more, or any time. First half hour or portion thereof, so it can be 15 minutes, and that's a $7.50 penalty. For the second half hour or any portion of it, it's an additional $10, so these compound. And for each successive half hour or portion of a half hour, it's $12.50, and that just keeps on going. Oh, that's a great question, Joan. Thank you. So grace, and this is something that a lot of people don't understand. There are two scenarios when you're talking about grace. The first one is that there's it's negotiated in the contract that there's a 12-minute grace. As long as that's not scheduled every day, they can go 12 minutes before we start imposing meal penalties. The second is, and this has been in the contract forever, if they're in the process of finishing a take, they can finish that take before penalties start to accrue. So if they're, they're a little over that 6 hours, and let's say that takes 20 minutes to finish, that will not start the clock until they finish that take. Now, if they've done that, they don't get the 12-minute grace as well. So it's kind of a one or the other. Does that, everybody clear on that?
Do we have to hear grace is being called? Because many times we don't hear it, and then
Right.
we go sign out and say, well, grace was called. We never heard it.
So here's the thing. They are supposed to make an announcement. Sometimes somebody might be in wardrobe or something, so, kind of be aware. Like if somebody is away and they come back and you're having breakfast, let them know. They just called an NDB. So a general announcement is fine. They don't have to tell every individual. But if that general announcement is made, that's good enough. There are times that production will try to tell you you've had an NDB when there actually wasn't one called. So, you want to watch that at the end of the day. If there really wasn't, if you didn't have a chance to go and get a meal, let us know. The other thing, and I'm going to take a brief minute because I think that we've got people who have questions. I'm going to let
just the cards.
Pass them down.
We're just going to collect the cards.
And so they'll come around and collect those for you. Great. Okay, good. So I need to move this along so that we can get to all those questions. Hopefully I'll answer them in the process.
Have to write.
So extension, I would imagine, is they're still filming the take or still shooting the take. Do they film anymore at all? Terminology, right? So that's probably what they mean by that, and yes, we would accept that. And also for grace, like for that 12-minute grace, they don't have to call that, and that's a common misconception. It's just automatic in the contract that there's 12 minutes. And
Does it have to be because they're in the middle of a shot? They can just call it if they want to get the extra 12 minutes?
no, there's two completely separate things. So let's say they're not extending the shot, and for some reason they don't get you to, give you your break until 1:12, and they should have at 1 o'clock. So we would not start charging meal penalties as long as they got you broken by 1:12. beyond that, it's, it starts the clock ticking. And, I'm sure that that's probably just for logistics and that sort of thing, but it can't be scheduled. For example, you can't see on the call sheet that, okay, we got here at 6 a.m., they've scheduled a lunch for 12:12, because that's obviously a scheduled break. So yes. And Mark, did that answer your question?
Did that answer your question?
Okay, great. Okay. So let's talk about some of the other terms and conditions in the contract. So it provides for a little bit of extra money if you're required to do things like, get wet. And it's literally get wet. It's not damp. It's not a drizzle. I mean, you have to be wet. Snow and smoke. So if you're working in snow, that's an additional $14 a day, and that goes to your base, so it counts in overtime. Smoke means you're working in smoke, and this is one of the most contested provisions in there. I don't care if it's outside. Smoke is smoke. And this is something we want to be really vigilant about. The producers hate that. They may tell you it's water-based. Unless it's only hot water that's become steam, there's other stuff in it. So I don't care if it's water-based. I don't care if it's, if the producer makes it or it's smoke from a cigarette. I realized when these contracts were written that we all smoked. But nowadays, you can't smoke anywhere. So if there's cigarettes, and that smoke doesn't stay in one area. So, we take a pretty aggressive position on this. The producers take just an equally aggressive position in the other direction. But let us know, and this is one of the most common things that we combat on a daily basis. Okay, Rick's going to give you an example.
I have an example of what happened on a movie set. It was a period piece, a 1930s piece. So everybody was smoking. Well, at the end of the night, and it was after hours, so nobody could call the SAG office because it was after hours. Nobody would have answered the phone. But there were people that are smokers that were paired with non-smokers. We were in a club atmosphere, concert venue. And I was placed at a table with a non-smoker. I was smoking, the herbal cigarettes. She was not. At the end of the night, the PA said, "Only if you had a cigarette in your hand will you get smoke." Well, yeah, exactly. You can tell what the reaction of the crowd was. So we finally, wrestled them to the ground and made them say no. Because there was smoke on the set, everybody gets smoke.
Awesome. Herbal, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so body makeup, skull cap, hair goods, and haircuts. So I want to tell you right off the bat, there's no money for a haircut. They have to give you notice. If they don't give you 2 days notice, you can say, "I don't want you to cut my hair," but they, may not use you. Otherwise, if you're having to wear a skull cap or a wig that's, affixed with, pins. I mean, I know it's like dreadfully uncomfortable. That is $19 added to your base. If you also have a lot of body makeup on, that's an additional $19. But remember, body makeup is actually just that. It's body makeup. So you have to be on 50% of your body. For women with low-cut gowns, if the arms and the upper chest and the face are all covered, that counts. But for the most part, it's and it's body. It's not stuff on your clothes. That's a wardrobe allowance. So if they're putting makeup to look like blood or dirt or explosions on your clothes, it actually has to be on your body. Wardrobe allowance. And I know this is also a bone of contention. So in the theatrical agreement, what it says is that, if you report in the required wardrobe, and in addition, you're asked to bring one or more changes, then you're paid for the changes. So the first outfit is free under these contracts. For the second outfit, whether you wear it or not, it's $9. And then beyond that, for each additional outfit, it's $6.25. So, You know, what happened to me the one time that I did this type of work umpty years ago? They said, okay, you have to be at Malibu at 8 o'clock in the morning. Already I knew this was not the job for me. And bring 5 changes of clothes. I'm like, what? So I sympathize. I know what you guys go through. But they do have to pay you for those changes because it's a lot of work to, you know, maintain, to bring them. And then formal wear. So formal wear, they pay you from the get-go. You don't get a free formal wear. That's $18 for the formal wear, which is, you know, like long gowns. Cocktail length dresses are not considered formal. And then also police uniform is $36. And there's also language about period costumes, national dress costumes, a white Palm Beach suit. How many have a white Palm Beach suit? I love that. We have a lot of archaic terms in the agreement, but you know, those are the sorts of things that you get extra money for. That's $18. Okay, let me get my control here.
You know, I want to say something about the...
Please.
Yeah, the wardrobe. I wanted to say something about the wardrobe. Although it says if we are requested by the producers to bring a second look. In other words, on our info line, it says non-union, wear 1, bring 3. Union, wear your best, layer if you can, bring an extra set. Okay, they didn't say volunteer. They said bring an extra outfit. That we get paid for. If you volunteer and bring extra outfits, that you do not get paid for. I just wanted to clarify that.
However, say, Joan, write it down.
Write it down.
So if they are asking for you to volunteer wardrobe, that's a no-no. And you know, we used to literally monitor the outgoing lines. This problem started up, you know, like 15, 20 years ago, something like that. We would call all the casting lines. And if we heard volunteer choices or options, it's, you know, you don't get to volunteer. That's only if you just do it on your own and they have not asked for it that you wouldn't get paid. But when they say, you know, volunteer wardrobe, we took that to mean wear 1, bring 2, which was kind of the normal request back in the day, and we filed claims. And we finally got this practice corralled. I wouldn't say that it's stopped because we still always have people that are trying to get around $6.25 or $9. I don't understand why it's such a big deal, but it's also, you know, they feel like they're getting a little something if they do. So really and truly, let us know. If you hear that on a casting line, call us. You know, you've got a little button on your phone that you can record the outgoing info. Just hit record and send that to us. You know, we will follow up on that because this is something that just, you know, is against the contract, but it really ticks me off. So that's wardrobe. Do we have something later on about? I mean, wardrobe is such an important part of being a background actor. You know, back in the day, they had to wear and model their evening wear, and you were considered a dress extra. So there's a lot of ways to manage your wardrobe, but just a couple of things that I wanted to mention. You don't have to spend a fortune. This suit cost me $6.25 at Goodwill. Most of my clothes, you know, I mean, I'm going to admit it. You don't have to spend a lot of money. There's so many places. And the other thing is make sure that your wardrobe looks nice. You know, don't throw it all into a box and carry it in over your arm. Invest in a garment bag. Go to yard sales, you know, go to garage sales, church bazaars, all that kind of, you know, you can find garment bags for not a lot of money. Oftentimes, if you'll go to one of the major department stores and ask them for a hanging bag, you know, they'll give you one of the nice ones. What am I doing here?
You moved.
Oh God, fix it for me. Sorry. But, you know, and I know that the Education and Outreach Committee may be working on a special event about wardrobe and makeup.
Yes, so you're good.
I'm good?
Yes, that's the television
okay, I'm
agreement.
a television. Yeah, no, that's where we're supposed to be. But anyway, that was just a couple of little tips on wardrobe, and it can really make a difference. You know, if you're professional, you have wardrobe. And all of these things go a long way to increasing your opportunities to work. So if you're professional, if you have the wardrobe, if you've, all of this stuff, there's no guarantee of work. Nobody gets a free lunch. You really have to work at this. But if you do, it can be rewarding.
I had the experience on Friday. I worked on a show that I'd never worked on before, never even heard of. And part of my repertoire are bow ties. I love my bow ties. So I was playing a lawyer, and I showed up, in a nice lawyer suit, wearing a bow tie, and they asked me if I'm available to come back today, which unfortunately I wasn't. But they said, don't worry about it, you'll be back. And they loved how I looked. So because of that, I was able to hopefully secure a little regular job.
Awesome. Great. So we'll talk. Is this on? Okay. So now we'll talk about the television agreement. And when we say the television agreement, we're talking about what you traditionally knew as the SAG television agreement or the AFTRA Exhibit A. So it's primetime network dramatic programming. We just got basic cable into that in the last negotiations. Syndication, pay TV, and DVD. So what pay TV is like your HBO, your Showtime, something that you're paying a subscriber, a significant amount above your basic package. Everything else like, what is it? AMC and FX and Disney Channel and HGTV, those are basic cable packages, and it just depends on what you get. So the terms for pay TV are that, that's what that terminology means. These are also negotiated with the AMPTP, and it's actually negotiated together. So the TV and the theatrical agreements are negotiated at the same time. The current contract expires June 30th. All the same things that I mentioned about wages and working conditions apply. It's just that there are some things that are a little bit different in the television agreement. Now, one thing that's interesting is you're probably going to work the television agreement more if you're living out here. It wasn't always that way, but this is where most of television production is. Movies, on the other hand, are taking advantage of tax incentives around the country. So a lot of people who used to work movies only are finding themselves doing more and more television. Remember this slide? Same jurisdictional scope. Where it's different is in the caps. Oh, okay, so that's X1. That's X1, that's X2. Got my little arrows in there. All of the definitions are the same as the theatrical agreement. Your rates, so there's kind of a hinky little catch in the rates. This is for most of the SAG-AFTRA television agreement, and it's the same thing as theatrical, so I'm not going to waste time there. This is what's considered Legacy Exhibit A. And several years back, because these used to always be jointly negotiated, SAG and AFTRA would go to the table together, and back in 2008, there was a bit of a rift. And so AFTRA was able to negotiate a deal. It took the Screen Actors Guild a little bit longer to get to our deal. And so the rates lagged behind a little bit. Now that we're all together as SAG-AFTRA, on a forward-going basis, all the rates will end up the same. But for those old shows that were on a little bit higher rate, they didn't want to make those people take a pay cut. And so those rates will continue until they just die out. So eventually you will never see this screen. Or I don't know, maybe some of those will run forever. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to think of like The Good Wife was a Legacy Exhibit A.
Hawaii Five-0.
Hawaii Five-0. So those are things that were, they have a little bit higher rate now, but once all of those shows have run their course, it will all be what you're seeing on the SAG-AFTRA television agreement. So the cap in television is a little bit lower, and it's always tough to get this number up. It's currently 21. That excludes any swimmers or skaters. But on half-hour and hour shows, up to 3 stand-ins aren't counted, so it's up to 24. Same thing on the overtime. It's exactly the same as theatrical. Same thing on meal periods. All of this is the same, so I'm not going to waste time going through all of that. So upgrades. Am I still talking?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll take over.
I'm going to hand it off to Fatna soon, but But upgrades, and this is part of being a background actor. You know, you might get upgraded to a principal performer. I think a lot of background actors just wait for that. So there's several ways that you can be upgraded in the TV and theatrical department, or contracts. And basically what that means is that you've been asked to do work by someone who has the authority to ask you, which would be the director or assistant director. Another star performer, unless they're the producer, does not have the right to upgrade you. So if they suggest that you say something and you do, we can't pursue that. But for non-script lines, you're upgraded to a principal performer. There are a few times where that's not the case. Was what's called the agreed interpretation of 1969, which we actually made part of the contract last negotiation. So if there are 5 or more background actors and they're saying exclamatory words or phrases, so think paparazzi, think a horse race where you go 7, come on, run, that sort of thing. Exclamatory words and phrases, you don't have to be upgraded if there's 5 or more. Also, traditional dialogue that the ordinary person would be presumed to know, which is like the Pledge of Allegiance, the Lord's Prayer, although that's a little out of date. Remember, agreed interpretation of 1969. And then if it's 15 or more, as long as you're in unison and you're on camera in unison. So, they can't go around and do a panning shot and land on people. We got a ton of people upgraded on Hitchcock for that. But they can have people, if you're speaking in unison, as long as there's 15 or more on camera, they don't have to upgrade you. Okay, so it says right there, must be given by the director. So, and this is one of the most important things is don't give it away. Don't volunteer lines. We can't get you upgraded if you volunteer lines and they say, wow, that's terrific. Thank you. We appreciate that, but we're not going to give you any residuals or any more money. Another thing that's important is that you have to be mic'd and recorded. So a lot of times you'll be at a party scene or something, or they're just not recording sound, and so they'll let people say whatever they want to. So you have to be mic'd. A lot of times something will be picked up by a principal body mic, but if there was not an intent for that to be picked up, we can't get you upgraded. Injected dialogue, which is something that you weren't asked to do, those sorts of things. But if somebody comes up to you and says, look, it doesn't look right if you're not speaking here, why don't you say, hi, I'm going to be your waiter tonight, instead of standing there like, a silent movie. Then they have to put you on a day performer contract.
I'd like to talk about that real quickly. On Grey's Anatomy, I was playing a waiter, and it was a scene with, I don't watch the show, so I don't know the actors, but Dr. Bailey, anybody know who she is? Anyway.
Yeah, of course.
And her, I don't watch the show, so, and her boyfriend. And I was the only background in the scene. George. Well, we rehearsed the scene, and they come in, and the boyfriend surprised her with a Valentine's Day supper in the cafeteria. And we were introduced. And after 3 times, after 1 rehearsal and 2 takes, the actress, Chandra, is that her name?
Yeah, something like that.
Said to the director, wait, this is not right. We are being introduced. He should at least acknowledge the fact. So the director, okay, what would you say? And I said, well, it's a pleasure to meet you as well. Fine, I got my upgrade. So a lot of times, the actor will go to bat for you as well.
So in situations like that, you should be given a contract on set. There are times that doesn't happen for whatever reason. Either they lost track of time, they forgot, they were trying to get away with something. But in those cases, let us know. We'll be happy to pursue that claim for you. Just remember the things that we talked about. You have to be mic'd, recorded, directed, etc. But we'll pursue that, and we have to go and look at dailies. So this is another thing that happens when you're being upgraded, is that we have to, file the claim with the producer. If they dispute it, we have to go and look at the dailies. So it helps us to know as much detail as possible about the specific scene. I don't know what you had for breakfast that morning, or what you were doing, all of that kind of stuff. Some people go into too much detail. But a current picture, and pay attention to where you are in the scene. So I know a lot of times we'll go and look at something and the action is focused like right on Jane and Carol, for example. And Joan, all the way in the back row, said something to Jack, but it's not picked up. But you have to look where the cameras are placed. So if I've got a camera right on Jane and Carol, we're not even going to see Joan back there. So these are some of the things that we see a lot of times when people are asking for upgrades. But again, like I said, we'll go to see the dailies. We'll fight on your behalf. We do it all the time. We get people upgraded all the time. So don't be afraid to file a claim. And I'm sure that somewhere in your packet there's a claim form, and they showed you earlier on the website how to get to that, or call the background actors department and someone will be happy to help you. Stunt upgrades. Now, occasionally, and they're not supposed to do this. This is something that we really frown upon. We want stunt performers doing stunts. There shouldn't be a situation where they're like, oh, okay, you need to jump this horse over the cliff and fall into the river. No, we want qualified stunt performers to do that. Okay. So, don't try to do something if it's too hazardous or if it's dangerous. We really want to leave that to the professional stunt performers. We care very, very much about your safety, and we want you to care very much about your safety too. So if it's the slightest bit dangerous and you don't feel qualified, just say no. That being said, if indeed you are qualified to do that, and they ask you to do it, and then they don't upgrade you, we will pursue an upgrade for you. But just remember that you can always say no. And there are nice ways to say no, and there are not so nice ways to say no. But if you just say, look, I want to be a team player here, but I don't feel safe doing that. That's not going to put a bad mark in your file or anything like that. I mean, they will appreciate it, and the stunt coordinators will appreciate it. So, be safe above all else. You can also get upgraded for professional dancing and singing. And these are very specifically defined terms. So a professional singer is someone who is professionally trained. They're being hired specifically to sing. They're doing things that require rehearsals and harmonizing and, being able to carry that perfect tune that I've never been able to do. So it's not like, you can be asked to sing Happy Birthday or, anything where it's just, non-professional singing that you might, you're sitting in a bar and everybody starts singing Rocky Mountain High, and you join in, whereas, let's say that, John Denver comes into the bar and starts singing it, and that's a principle. Dancing is an even more difficult one because it's choreographed. It's something that needs rehearsals. A lot of times just a simple line dance, you can be asked to do choreographed social dancing under the background contract, and it doesn't qualify for an upgrade. But, if they need, people to be, doing the Viennese waltz and looking really, really good doing it, and they're the main attraction, that's professional dancing and has to be covered under the principal contract. And again, call us and ask us if you're not sure. We'll be happy to take a look at it or to hear you out and see what you did. And, we can either say, that doesn't quite make it, but, a lot of times we'll go and look at the dailies and get people upgraded. Oops. I was so excited to get this little control, and now I'm not utilizing it. Okay, so we're gonna take a little trip in another contract now. It's called the National Code of Fair Practice for Network Television Broadcasting. It's more commonly known in the industry as the Network Code or the Net Code. And it covers pretty much, when you talk about, you've got your dramatic primetime scripted television for basic cable, pay TV, free television. This kind of covers everything else. So it's going to cover non-script formats. It's going to cover game shows, variety shows, soap operas, which are also known as serials, late night talk shows, all of that. It's negotiated with the networks, curiously masquerading as the AMPTP. It's the same people across the table, but they're, where they were there for, HBO the last time, they're there for Turner Networks this time. The current contract expires June 8 of 2018. And so we did a 4-year contract the last time that we negotiated this so that we're not, so we could actually pay attention to that contract, and instead of like one right on top of the other, when they expired at the same time. So you'll also hear terminology front of the book. The reason is because when they were negotiated separately, after Exhibit A was the second half of the network code. So that was the back of the book, and everything else was the front of the book. So now if you hear front of the book, it just means the network code. And that covers, I think I told you about all these things that it covers. Now this screen is kind of nice because this shows you where we have jurisdiction in the network code. Everywhere. Everywhere that we have any kind of jurisdiction, so if we cover it, background are covered on that show. There are also no caps. Now that being said, with all of these contracts, there are clauses that says that we will freely grant waivers for crowd scenes. There are also certain scenarios where large crowd scenes are discounted, like if they have 30 or more, they get a 20% discount, that sort of thing. But for the most part, that's one thing that that is really great about this contract, is it does apply wherever you are. So you don't have to worry about if you're 2 miles over that 75 miles from Rick's house. Definitions are a little bit different in this code. So let me back up a little bit, and I'll give you a little bit more context here. So when the network code was first negotiated, this was negotiated for live television or programs shot in a live manner. So it's not where you can, film one scene one day and film the scene that happened before it the next day. And there's editing, and you can screw up your lines as much as you want because there's always another take. This is for live television, and so everything is negotiated with the idea that you're rehearsing up to a specific tape day, and then you're taping the show. And so that's one of the reasons this gets kind of confusing, especially if you're used to working in dramatic. But we'll try to demystify it a little bit here. Background actors in the network code are defined as performers who do not speak any lines whatsoever, as individuals, but may be heard singly or in concert as part of a group or crowd. So that's pretty familiar. Then there are performers who speak 5 lines or less. Those are, it's principal performers, you get the rate, you get residuals, but in the network code, we don't draw the line between principals and background. So a lot of times, if you're upgraded on a network code show, it's going to be to the 5 line or less category. And then lines defined in this contract, a line can consist of not more than 10 words, and part of a line is considered a line. In the other contract that we just finished talking about, 1 word can be a line. So we don't count lines in that contract. Stand-ins are what they're supposed to be in the other contract, just substituting for cast members during rehearsals and for blocking and lighting. So now we'll get into rates. And the rates are kind of a bit all over the place because different types of programming come with different economic concerns. So we may be able to get an increase in variety programs, but we can't in serials, which are soap operas. And I think this is probably one that's really, sticks in people's craw. So these are program fees. And anytime you see program fee, that's going to be very different from what you're used to on a daily rate. So the program fee it depends on the length of the program. So you'll see there $115 for 15 to 30 minutes, and that's an 8.5 hour day. So the 8.5 hours is included in that fee, plus the 15 or 30 minutes for the program. So you always add the length of the program to the included hours. Yeah. And so you see it goes up a little bit more over 30 to 45 minutes, 45 to 60, and then over 60 to 90 minutes. Now, this being said, there's not a lot of soap operas being done anymore. I think there's, maybe 2 under this code? 3. A lot of them are moving to new media, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But this is a very challenged area in the contract, and that's why these rates are still as low as they are. Overtime, and there's a couple of different types of overtime. Overtime 1 is straight time rate, which is $17 an hour now. So if they go beyond that 8.5 hours, that's how that's paid. And then the $22 if they go into an additional day. Anytime there's, beyond, so it's basically time and a half. Stand-ins are at $25 an hour. So stand-ins are hourly in this contract, and depending on the type of program, it tells you what your guarantee is. So dramatic programs other than network primetime. I'm trying to think of an example of that, maybe children's programming or, but anyway, it would be a sitcom that's not network primetime. So it can be non-primetime, it can be non-network. These rates went up once in this contract. These are 8-hour days, so these are day rates, they're not program fees. And so you can see it's $115 for general, $126 for special ability, and stand-ins are at $178. Overtime works the same way it does in the TV and theatrical agreement, except that overtime is always capped at time and a half. But it's figured the same way that you're used to. It's like that number divided by 8 times time and a half. So it's not a set figure. Non-dramatic programs, which can be, think Ellen Show, The Tonight Show, Saturday Night Live, game shows. Those are your non-dramatic programs. And you see it's all dependent on the length of the program. And then where you see included rehearsal hours and included days, so that is what that program fee covers. So for example, it's a 5-minute or less program, it's $42, but they only get an hour and a half to rehearse, plus the length of the program included in that on one day. So if it goes beyond that hour and a half plus the program, then you're going to actually get overtime. So you'll get your $17 an hour, that sort of thing. That's kind of how that works. So you can see at $231 looks like a pretty good deal, but that's for 13 hours over 2 days. So that's kind of how that works. I know this is a confusing contract, so we will take questions at the end of the evening. Unless I'm talking too much. Am I talking too much? Speed it up, sorry. My bad. Non-dramatic programs other than variety, regardless of the program length, we're back on a day rate. This I think I already said all of this. Sorry. I tend to get carried away. The cap, we talked about that. There are none. Meal periods. Now, this is something that's a little bit different. It is 6 hours now. I think that, we finally got that instead of the, a meal appropriate to the time of day within a reasonable time around the lunch hour, that sort of thing. So the first meal period, it's a flat $25. So it can be a half hour, 3 hours. But it's a flat $25. Where you see second or succeeding meal period missed, that means if they broke you for lunch and then it's 6 hours later and they're still not done, they don't break you, that's the $35 penalty. For work and smoke or hazardous, there's no specific pay, but you have to be given notice. Otherwise, if there is a hazard that is very, very severe, there's basically a $100 hazard bump. But it's something that almost has to rise to the level of a stunt. Wardrobe on this contract, you get paid for the first one, which is $10, but you only get paid for the outfits that you wear on camera. What's interesting in this is that that is pensionable. It's not pensionable in the TV theatrical contract. There are formal evening and furs, et cetera, and that fee is $25. Upgraded to 5-line or less. I think I talked about that a little bit more. But this is a unique upgrade situation. So this is kind of similar to the old silent bit. How many people remember the silent bit? Okay. I know there's more people out there that remember it. But basically, you know, if you're addressed, thank you. If you're addressed by a principal performer, so one of these 3 criteria has to be there, or you're alone in a scene, or if you speak individually as part of a group or crowd, and then the "and" is the real kicker there, and receives more than minimal direction, and portrays a point essential to the story. So not just to the scene, to the whole story. It has to actually move the storyline along. And, you know, so as long as it does that, it meets one of the other 3 criteria, that's an upgrade. And it's an upgrade to the 5-line or less category, which we've already kind of covered a bit.